Pat Mayo Hour.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour, UFC 200. The song for Toi en Quebec. Is that how I say it?
Yeah, pretty much.
En Quebec, they do say DraftKings picks, preview, everything, gambling odds. We got it all here. Cody Saftik in studio from the Bookie Beatdown and the Fight Network. Before we get to the entire card, I got to let the people know that I'm no MMA expert. That's you. I'm here solely for daily fantasy purposes. So when I mispronounce one of these names, you're going to hear because it's embarrassing.
But there's a bunch of megastars on this card, Pat. This is a big offering, so you should be able to be okay here.
It's true. I recognize this Brock Lesnar guy.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've heard of him before.
You know what? When we first start talking, I remember that's like the first, you're like, oh, I know 2 MMA fighters. I was like, oh, yeah? Who? You're like, oh, Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir, because he beat him up. I was like, oh, well, okay.
Those were the 2 guys that I did?
Yeah,
it was like the one match I had ever seen.
Right. And then you ran into Stephen Bonner at some convention in like Indiana.
Oh, man, what a loser.
And now he's he's another recognizable name for you.
The guy could chuck a football.
I'm sure he's a natural athlete.
He was, yeah. He could launch like a good 60 yards. He's a big dude, too.
Oh, yeah.
No one showed up to see Stephen Bonner. Poor guy. That's what you get for going to Atlantic City. No one showed up to see me either, so it doesn't really matter.
So Stephen Bonner shouldn't feel that bad.
No, he's a bigger star than me, but, going into it, I would have assumed that.
Yeah.
But no, here we are. Let's start with, there's 5 big fights here. Maybe there's even more than 5 big fights. Like even Johnny Hendricks is on this card.
Whole card's good fights.
At the very now, did they load this up just because it's UFC 200?
Yeah, definitely.
Is this going to be one of the highest? This is going to be the biggest pay-per-view since what?
Since Conor McGregor's last fight.
Oh, really? So it won't be as big as that?
Well, it could be because it's UFC 200. It has a lot of names. It has a lot of pull behind it. I mean, even now you can hear the marketing machine moving, so to speak. I mean, radio ads and TV ads, and there's a buzz that's being created about it. So certainly, like UFC 100, a lot of casual fans who are like, I don't even watch UFC. Oh, but it's UFC 100. I'll watch that. This will get that. But Conor McGregor is their biggest star. Their second biggest star is Ronda Rousey. This card features neither of those 2 fighters.
But it has, like, the next 10 people on it. So, their star power combined can't rival Ronda and Conor McGregor?
Well, I think that the fact that they put Brock Lesnar on so late and kind of out of left field is kind of a signification of, ooh, you know what, desperate times here. Because Brock Lesnar even says to himself, he's like, I was looking to fight at like UFC 205. And they were just like, hey, can you get on UFC 200?
Yeah, why not?
They realized that they didn't have a marquee name on it. They have lots of marquee names if you're a fan of the sport, but they didn't have that one hook that would take out that casual fan. So they're like, okay, you know what? We'll put Brock Lesnar. Brock is self-admittedly probably hasn't trained as much as he'd like to for this fight. It's kind of short notice. It's kind of, as I mentioned, out of left field considering that McGregor versus Diaz was supposed to be the big fight. That's what they were angling towards. Didn't work out. Throw some other good fights on that. You know what? Buzz is not as good as we want. Let's just throw Brock Lesnar on there. So I think that's kind of an indication of, ooh, this probably wasn't trending as high as we wanted it to be.
So unlike most shows, we're probably going to start with Jones or Cormier or Lesnar. What do you think is the biggest quick knockout lock on this card, if there is one?
If it's going to be a lock, you would have to say Mark Hunt over Brock Lesnar.
Really?
One guy's an MMA fighter and one guy's a professional wrestler. Now, I get that Brock has done this before and had success.
Champ.
A long time ago.
Champ? Well, how old's Mark Hunt?
41, 42.
How old's Lesnar? Like 38, 39?
He's definitely younger, but I mean, heavyweights be heavyweights. Heavyweights, they mature a lot later. They're a lot bigger guys. They don't have like that wear and tear of like running 10 miles a day.
But like,
because they don't run 10 miles a day.
But isn't like Mark Hunt, didn't you tell me like they were like trying to get rid of him, but he kept winning?
Yeah, fact. They offered him like hundreds of thousands of dollars to be like, just please go away. And he was just like, no, I'm coming back and I'm knocking guys out. And since then, his last fight, he knocked out Frank Mir, Brock's former rival. If he touches these guys, they go to sleep. Brock's a guy that's never really liked to get hit. When you look at it stylistically speaking, it's like, geez, you know what? Mark Hunt's a pretty short guy. I think he's like 5'11" for the weight class, so he is short. He's hard to get down in the sense that if you're going to take him down, you got to get deep on him, and you're probably going to get hit a couple times. Brock probably takes him down. Don't get me wrong. Brock probably gets him down a time at least. But at some point, Mark Hunt gets up. Or at some point, the round ends. And after that, I'm not so sure. Brock, in his last couple performances, we were starting to see when he doesn't really get the takedown, when he's fighting a Cain Velasquez or an Alistair Overeem, if the takedown's not available to him, he has to now take strikes. He has to strike with you. And you just can't do that. Can't do it. So now you take the fact that Brock Lesnar, who was, good for the time period and good for what styles were back then, yeah, you had that Brock Lesnar, and he had some success, and then he leaves, and then he comes back 5 years later, and he's just going to use the exact same thing he had to replicate success. I just don't think it works like that.
Is he a better wrestler
Than he was 5 years ago? No
Mark
chance. Hunt. Oh, yeah, easy.
So there is a path for him to win here.
There is, yeah. They're heavyweights.
So draft, yeah, but Brock's probably not going to win by knockout.
He is so big.
That maybe?
Absolutely. Because look at that Frank Mir fight, if you remember from when you watched it at UFC 100.
That was the UFC 100?
Yeah, it was 100 pay-per-views ago. Now Brock's going back to UFC 200. It's a pretty big indication of where his skills are at, considering the sport has evolved very much since.
But couldn't you have made the same case against Mark Hunt like 3 years ago?
If this fight took place 3 years ago, I think Brock Lesnar is the favorite.
Brock Lesnar opened as the favorite here until everyone started betting on it, and everyone bet on Mark Hunt.
I don't remember what the line opened at, but if he was a favorite, it would have been for like a half hour.
Yeah, I think he opened as a -120 favorite, and very quickly that flipped.
Well, let me ask you this, okay? You know, somebody who has been around the gambling world a little bit, working the fantasy sports side, all types of gambling on sports. I have not actually met anybody who's picking Brock Lesnar, yet the odds are really not ludicrous on this. It's not, why isn't it Mark Hunt a 3-1, 4-1?
I would figure because this fight in particular is attracting different types of bets, people you don't know. Because the people that are going to tune in to buy a pay-per-view that Brock Lesnar's on, you probably don't know these people. They're not people that are watching MMA every single week.
Some of them, for sure.
They're
Yeah, I get it.
casual people, right? And if they're the people who are inclined to bet on this, they're betting on Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm guessing at least, unless Vegas has some inside track, they really think that Lesnar's going to win, and they're trying to entice you to bet on Mark Hunt, which I doubt is the case. But I bet you there's a lot of public money on Brock Lesnar. It's like, in football, the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the Packers, or whoever the big team, those three are historically public teams. Now, like the Patriots, whenever Brady is playing,
right.
Our Denver was last year, Seattle became that when they started being good, that they get extra credit in terms of their line. Like their lines will never be that big the other way because people will always bet on them. Lesnar is sort of a public fighter where people are just going to bet on him regardless because they want to see him win.
Yeah, because it just seems strange to me when you look at it. When you actually look at it, you have essentially a guy who he might as well be an actor. You might as well take Jackie Chan and be like, could Jackie Chan have beaten somebody?
I would say he's
got real skills.
He's more of a stuntman.
Yeah, he's a stuntman. And listen, we can make all the jokes aside,
but he's also a D1 champion in wrestling, like 15 years ago.
Exactly.
But he still has those
really
skills,
long time ago. From I think he won in 2000. Okay,
he also
16 years ago. He was able to win, right?
This does seem to be the one sport where you can age and still be okay. Like Dan Henderson's still fighting.
Yeah. Fair enough. But Dan Henderson's a guy that's never taken 5 years away to go take steel chair shots to the head.
Fair enough.
Right?
But also Dan Henderson's not the world-class athlete that Brock Lesnar is.
He absolutely is.
Do you think that Brock
maybe came backflip off the top rope,
which is a big feat of athleticism.
Yeah.
Whether it's staged or not. He was also one cut away from making the Vikings.
Okay, so Brock's a better athlete.
That had never played football.
Brock's a better athlete. But Dan Henderson's a former Olympian. Dan Henderson's a guy who's had 20-plus years of career longevity. I mean, he's probably not a better athlete, but he's still an athlete.
I'm not saying that he's a bad athlete, but in the pantheon of athletes that are like John Jones is probably a better athlete than Brock Lesnar is. But John Jones is probably one of the better athletes ever in the sport, isn't he?
Yeah, hard to tell, man. Brock's such a good athlete. I mean, you're just going athletic.
And that's
just
what I'm talking about.
That's the standard. He's a pretty athletic dude.
So I'm just trying to think through ways that Brock can win this fight. So wrestling, maybe he has an advantage. Sheer athleticism and size, he has Mark Hunt beat that way, right?
This is his path to victory. He goes in, he shoots the takedown, probably gets done pretty early, is going to get it, gets on top, is a gigantic piece of man. Mark Hunt going to have a lot of trouble getting this guy off of him. And like that Frank Mir fight I was saying before, he just gets him in a bad position and he just hits him. And his hand is like, if you were to take both of your hands and put them to one, that's like half of his hand.
And dump it in concrete?
Exactly. So this thing hits you a couple times and it's like, oh, well, it's just a couple small little shots on the ground. It's like, you can't remember where you are now. You're all discombobulated and you're like, what? Oh, no. Fight's over. So yes, Brock can do that. But if we're going to play especially GPP. I did put him on a cash game because...
Who, Brock?
No, Mark Hunt. The price is right on him, man. It really is.
Yeah, the price is 10-4. Brock is 9,000.
Yeah.
So you didn't take any Brock. You took some Mark Hunt and GPP.
Mark would be a good punt, but if he's going to...
He's not a good punt. He's 10-4. He's expensive.
No. Brock Lesnar would be
Brock
a good
Lesnar.
punt. Yeah, Mark Hunt's 10-4, but when you look at Mark Hunt, he's cheaper than Sage Northcutt and has a much better chance of getting that early finish. So it's like, okay, I like him. He's a little cheaper than Jim Miller. He's cheaper than John Jones. So when you look at it on paper, certainly it's like, geez, Mark Hunt has a very legitimate chance here of finishing Brock Lesnar. I think most people are on the same page on that. Could something else happen? Of course. But most people are on the same page, he probably stops him. And you're going to give him to me for 10-4, and he's probably got just as much of a chance, if not a lot better chance, than those guys ranked higher than him. I got to take the play on that. I would have liked to avoid him on a cash game. Problem is, there's people that you like in the high end, and there's people that, and the low end's awful. That middle range of guys like Johnny Hendricks, guys like Kelvin Gastelum, it's like, Julianna Pena and Kat Zingano, and then I don't know. I don't know. They could all go either way.
So are you avoiding those or piling up on those?
I decided to go Julianna Pena because the price is just so good on her. But once again, I have her on GPP, and I decided to put her on cash game as well. She's the one person in my lineup up for GPP that I'm not positive she's going to get the finish, but it's a possibility, and I'm going to play that.
And as we always say about the female fights is that there are enough significant strikes that even if you just go to decision and lose, you can still build up some fantasy points along the way.
Especially this Julianna Pena girl, like she goes
she's
for
8,900.
Yeah, she goes for it. That's
so
what I like.
So she could get a quick knockout.
Quick knockout is possible, sure. But basically, she'll just try to muscle you to the ground by any means possible. Her striking's real sloppy, but she'll just overpower you, get you to the ground. When she gets girls to the ground, she just likes to pass to the mount. When she passes to the mount, she'll just use both of her hands and just completely pound you out. Kat Zingano's better on the ground, but Julianna Pena is big and she's physical and she hasn't had as much of a layoff, so to speak. So I think she matches up good against Kat Zingano. I think she can get the fight to the ground. I think when she does get the fight to the ground, she's going to hurt her. But once again, is she going to be able to just go out there and finish her? That'd be tough. That being said, Ronda Rousey took 7 seconds to beat this girl, 8 seconds, 10 seconds to beat her. So the possibility is there.
Well, the other female fight, Miesha Tate is back taking on Amanda Nunes.
Yes.
Oh, nailed it. Nunes. I feel like I've got that one wrong before.
Probably.
In the past. I feel like I'm learning.
Because you say it like it was some crazy Italian.
No, that's not one of the...
Is it Man Nunes?
That's not one of the Portuguese names that I assume is Italian, although now I know that none of them are Italian.
No.
They're all Portuguese.
Pretty much.
So Tate is 10-7, Nunes is 8-7. Is Tate like a lock to win this? She's minus 250, which isn't overwhelming compared to some of the other odds on the card.
Well, like you were saying before, there's certain people that are, favorites. People like to put money on them because it's like, oh, I don't recognize a whole lot of names on this card, but I know Brock Lesnar and I know Miesha Tate, and I know John Jones, so I'm just going to...
Miesha Tate?
Yeah, people like Miesha Tate a lot, because first of all, she had that rivalry with Ronda Rousey. So Ronda Rousey was definitely the star.
Is it really a rivalry when the other person just beats you down?
Well, they fought twice, so it becomes a rivalry at some point. And they're going to fight again, and they talk a lot of smack, and they always get in each other's grills.
Tate didn't beat her, though, did she? I thought it was Holly Holm who beat her.
Yeah, so Tate fought Ronda Rousey once in Strikeforce, once in the UFC, lost both of them.
That's not a rivalry.
Right. So everyone's like, oh, you know what? This rivalry's dead, so to speak. We saw the rematch. We don't need to see this fight anymore. But now Holly Holm comes in and beats Ronda Rousey. Then Miesha Tate comes in and beats Holly Holm. Now if Miesha Tate's victorious against Amanda Nunes, the Holm rematch probably makes the most sense, but the most money would be the Ronda Rousey fight.
Okay.
So there's certainly a rivalry there. And yes, she has that experience of fighting with the champion. She has that exposure of being on the grand stage. And even though she was the B-side to Ronda Rousey, there's a lot of people out there that don't like Ronda Rousey.
Why not?
Well, she's ignorant and arrogant. And
she's ignorant.
she thinks she's larger than life, and you know what? To her credit, she kind of
probably is.
She kind of is larger than life, but I think that got to her, and I think her biggest thing was, I don't like bullies. I don't like bullies. Girls should stand up to themselves and fight bullies. But she does not realize that she became a bully. Ronda Rousey is a bully. She bullies people all the time. She's very aggressive, and because she thinks in her mind, I can just beat you up, and and she probably can beat you up. People just give in to her demand. She's a sucky baby, and I'm glad that she lost. So I'll take heat for saying that. Miesha Tate will take heat because she's fighting her. But also the people that don't like Ronda Rousey, well, they're going to jump on Tate. And Tate's a beautiful girl. She's very, well-spoken, smart girl.
Very marketable.
Very marketable, the kind of girl that you can get behind. But she just wasn't the champion. She was, second-place finisher. But then she goes out, she beats Holly Holm. Now she's the champion. Now people are, I like Tate. I recognize Tate. I know she's tough. She excels in 5-round situations. And her opponent, Amanda Nunes, is known to tire after, say, 2 rounds. So even if she was to win the first 2 rounds, even if she's to beat on Tate for the first 2 rounds, she's going to get tired, and Tate's known to, be able to pull it into a second gear. That second gear should win the fight. But for the odds that you're looking at, and certainly on DraftKings, the price and value on it, I'm not feeling it at all. Amanda Nunes is a big, strong girl. She's very well priced at $8,700. And for a GPP, if you want a girl that has a possibility to go out there and get the finish, this girl absolutely has a possibility to go to the finish. I think so.
So she could be a punt play for you, because like you said,
punt play for sure, yeah.
There's a lot of high-end guys that you want to take, so you need to find some way to factor in some of these lower, cheaper players. So Nunes at 8,700 is sort of a pump play for a GPP team?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because Amanda Nunes, if she's going to finish, she goes out there. If she's going to win this fight, Pat, I really don't think she does it over the course of 5 rounds, because I don't think she has the gas to do it for 5 rounds. But we've seen in the past that she can go out with a girl like Sarah McMahon. Sarah McMahon makes, one small mistake. She eats 2 hellacious right hands, drops down, gives up her back, gets pounded, gets choked out. This is a former silver medalist. This is a girl who is probably still ranked in the top 5 in the UFC. Amanda Nunes can go out there and just butcher her. When you look at how she matches up with Miesha Tate standing, Miesha Tate likes to throw singular punches and has better movement. But Amanda Nunes is bigger, she's stronger, and she's going to have a lot better Muay Thai. When the fight physically hits the ground, Amanda Nunes is a black belt in BJJ. She's better on the ground. The wrestling and the cardio are going to go towards Tate. But those are not enough things to justify why I would spend that kind of money on her. And if you're trying to play her on DK and you want to get the finish, can she finish Amanda Nunes? 100% she can. But I don't think it would happen until rounds 3, 4, and 5 because you got to get this girl tired first. You got to exploit some holes in her game. You got to get this fight to the ground. And those are all tasks in itself. So I think if she does get the finish, it's going to be a late finish. And for $10,700, I don't really want to pay that kind of money for someone who may choke her out in the 3rd or 4th and not get me that bonus.
How did Jon Jones look in his first fight back? Because I feel like I remember that he didn't look so great.
Let me ask you this.
He won.
Right. And he won 5 rounds to none. So when people say, oh, he didn't look that good, it's like he didn't look that good as he cleanly, soundly
I didn't see the
won
fight.
every
This is
round.
just what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's because everybody likes to say that. But people want to watch a blood sport. They want to watch 2 guys just swing at the fences, right? And unfortunately, that's not good for career longevity. And smart fighters are just not going to do that. Jon Jones went out and he routed Ovince St. Preux 5 rounds to nothing. But somebody told Jon Jones prior to going out that, hey, listen, Conor McGregor's not going to be on UFC 200. The spot is open.
You win this fight, you're in the main event again.
So why would he go out and be like, oh, yeah, let's throw down, buddy? It's like, no. Take no risks and win. And not only did he take no risks and win, he did it almost perfectly. He got hit twice, and he won all 5 rounds. So I think when people are always like, George St. Pierre, best fighter in the world, it's like, how many George St. Pierre fights have you watched that you're entertained? Well, he's boring. He just takes the guy and beats him. Yeah. He takes the guy down, and he owns him for 5 rounds. Clean shutout. Some people see boring. Some people see Michael Jordan, right? In this case, Jon Jones, some people see boring. Some people see the guy had 25 minutes and was able to hit me twice. And I slammed this guy. I broke this guy's arm. I took him down. I pounded on him. I gave him sweet kicks to the midsection. I did enough to justify my performance, and I'm okay with that. I thought it was a good performance.
Yeah, he's not getting his fight of the night bonus.
No, and he's not going to make any new fans by fighting.
And he doesn't care.
No, he didn't get his fight of the night bonus, but you know what he got? His win bonus. And you know what he didn't have to do? Go to the hospital.
So he is 10-9, facing Daniel Cormier, who is 8-5. Broadcaster extraordinaire Daniel Cormier.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he actually is really good. I don't know about his chances in this fight, though. He's plus 250. Jones is minus 333. Like, Jones wins, right? Or is this a situation where maybe he hasn't fought any real competition in, 2 years, and he gets kind of overconfident here, and Cormier's up to the task.
You know what? I think it's a bit of column A, bit of column B. Jon Jones, they've already fought once. Jon Jones proved to be the superior guy.
I feel like I saw that one.
He probably, more than likely, won the fight 4 rounds to 1. He beat him. He took down the Olympian, the one thing people said he couldn't do. He stuffed the takedowns, the one thing people weren't sure if he could do. He looked good. He takes his time away. He goes off. He comes back against OSP. Same mediocre performance, although he does win the fight. And you got Daniel Cormier, who injured his leg, coming off the sidelines, being like, you know what? I watched that fight against Ovince St. Preux. He was basically doing commentating for it, right? It was a 3-man broadcast team for that one specific fight. Why? Because they knew going into that fight, you're probably going to fight this guy in UFC 200, so let's drum up some interest. And he's sitting there and he's thinking what most people at home are thinking. Geez, John doesn't look the same. John's not attacking the same. You know what? I could beat this version. I couldn't beat the last version of Jon Jones. This version of Jon Jones, I could beat this guy. So now he jumps into a training camp maybe a little bit too soon, and you've got this rematch coming up. One thing, though, and I will admit, I think Jon Jones wins. I think he's got the better skill set. However, $8,500 is ridiculously cheap.
It seems cheap, right?
Ridiculously cheap. And on a punt play, I would make that move. Because Daniel Cormier, Jon Jones, if you watch the first fight, Daniel Cormier has tons of good spots. He has tons of good moments. His wrestling is good. But beyond that, Jon Jones sometimes gets lackadaisical. And Cormier, he's okay with closing that clinch, getting you in a single collar tie, pounding you with right hands. His right hand is good. He has looked pretty decent against Alexander Gustafsson in his last fight. He really dug deep. Against Anthony Johnson, he choked out the #1 contender. This guy is good, and I think people are kind of starting to underestimate him highly and just be like, oh, Jon Jones, pound for pound the guy. Oh, Jon Jones. This is MMA, man. You can't sleep on anybody. Daniel Cormier is very, very good. So, yes, I have Jon Jones. And for GPP or cash game, couldn't really justify putting Jon Jones on there. Daniel Cormier, because I'm picking Jones, I didn't put him. But if I wanted a GPP team that I could, or a punt team essentially for GPP, $8,500 is seriously going to let you afford pretty much whatever else you want.
So let me ask you this. You have Amanda Nunes on a few of these, on your main GPP team.
Yeah.
Would you swap her out and put in Daniel Cormier if you're playing in like 5 teams? Like, is that the one to switch in and out?
I'm almost thinking Daniel Cormier would be almost great for, a complete punt GPP team. Nunes is a very punt GPP player as well, but you could definitely switch that out. However, I like him for cash games because he's got 5 rounds to work with, and I don't think he's getting finished. So at the very worst case scenario,
he's going to score like 55 points.
50, 60 points, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, he's going to get 100-plus points, right? So really, that's not too much of a downside considering you're on a cash game.
And that's
for GPP, he needs to finish. And if he's going to beat John Jones, he's probably more likely to beat him by decision than he is just landing some crazy fluke punch, which is obviously a possibility too.
Quick finish on this card. You said you like Jim Miller?
Yeah, Jim Miller. It's Jim Miller is going downhill fast. His opponent, Takanori Gomi, is already headed down that hill at an accelerated speed. He's already at the bottom of it. I love Gomi in everything he's done. And I'd love to see Gomi fight. And I'm so glad that the UFC hasn't just cut this guy, even though it's probably justified that they probably could just cut this guy. What I don't want to see is him fight the guys like Jim Miller. Why? Because he's got a bad ground game. He's not particularly good when guys get him down. And in his last number of fights, it's just like even the Joe Lauzon fight. Joe Lauzon just takes him down, takes his back. He's just hitting this guy who's unconscious. And then he just gets up and walks away. And the ref's like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, this guy's unconscious. And the ref's like, what? And then Gomi like bails to the ground, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this fight's over. And what happened is that Joe Lauzon, a black belt, is so much better on the ground than this guy that once he was able to get on his back, he's not going anywhere. He flattens him out, he pounds him out. Jim Miller, a guy that's already fought Joe Lauzon, beat him, fight of the year, one of the best fights I've ever seen, really. Jim Miller's the man. And yes, he's going downhill, but his last number of performances, he's fighting guys like Michael Chiesa and Donald Cerrone, who are the best. Gomi, meanwhile, he's not fighting those exact same guys. He's fighting a little lesser talent. And I think Jim Miller being the better wrestler, being the better ground specialist, having a granite jaw that'll allow him to take a couple shots on the feet if need be, I think he's going to get this fight to the ground. And when he does, he's going to flatten him out. He's going to choke him out with a rear naked choke. Or he'll TKO him, just like Joe Lauzon. So $10,800, I think he does get the finish, and I can justify playing that on cash games and GPP.
Either one?
Yeah.
Sage Northcutt. Is this his first fight since he lost?
Yes.
So they're shoehorning him in here at the very he'll probably be the first fight, I'm guessing?
The thing is, they've been moving the lineup a lot lately. He was the first fight, and then I've seen Jim Miller and Gomi as the first fight, and I've also seen Joe Lauzon, Diego Sanchez, either the first fight or like headlining their Fight Pass portion. So it's all over the place. If I had to guess, I would say he's the first or second fight.
They want him to win this fight, don't they?
100%. He just signed his own personal Reebok deal. So everyone's got a Reebok deal, like as a team, and then guys like Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey
have their own side deals.
Yeah, and he just got one. So I think it's pretty indicative of the fact that Reebok likes him, UFC likes him. Hey, everybody likes him. He's marketable. What do you don't want to do to a guy like that? Feed him to the wolves.
But didn't they give him like an easier opponent last time and he lost?
No, Bryan Barberina's a tough dude.
Okay.
A tough
So
dude.
that was a real fight.
Oh, yeah.
Is Northcutt going to just clean out Enrique here?
Well, that's the move, right? I mean, people would probably suggest, yeah, he's going to go out there and smoke him. But from what we saw in the Bryan Barberina fight, is he's not a complete fighter yet. He's obviously got big holes in his game. Notably the fact that he can't take a punch. At least is not comfortable. He could take a punch.
He's Barberina punch.
Yeah, he's uncomfortable with getting hit, right? So when he gets hit, he kind of freezes a half second. When he freezes a half second, it's no good for him. His style, listen, this kid's like, 19 years old. His style, he'll be awesome when he's 25, 30 years old, but it's going to take that long to develop his style. Because we see a guy like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's got that in and out movement. He's got that karate background. Him and Sage don't have the same exact style. But when you look at Stephen Thompson when he was 18, 19 years old, Sage is way more advanced than him. Now he's 33 years old and he's primed to challenge for the world title. When Sage is 30 years old, 25, 30 years old, I think he'll be very good as well. They've got to give him easy fights. And in the UFC, there's not a whole lot of easy fights. But Enrique Marin, if you're going to give him one, it would be him.
Sage Northcutt is the most expensive player on DraftKings for UFC 200. He's $11,300. That's more than everyone.
Yeah.
Is it worth it to take him because he's probably going to win?
No, absolutely not worth it to take him. Because once again, you just got these big holes in his game. Enrique Marin's not completely a fish out of water, right? I mean, he has a submission game. He can choke an opponent out. He can submit an opponent. And with Sage Northcutt, he just does this in and out movement. But where has he shown biggest flaws? On the ground. Cody Pfister 2 fights ago took him down, exposed him on the ground. And his last fight, he was doing fairly well until the fight hit the ground. And then the biggest thing too, Pat, is that he's just a young kid. Like I said, everybody's made mistakes. Everybody said stupid stuff when they were younger that they're like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? He loses his last fight, and then immediately he's like, Well, it was a fluke. I got strep throat. Oh, my foot hurt. It's like, kid, man, just own up to it. Just own up to it. But his dad, his old man, who's his coach and his top sponsor and his roommate. Oh, that was Sage.
Let's backtrack a little bit there. Yeah. Roommates?
Well, he lives at home.
So he just lives at home. It's not like Northcutt has his own place and his dad lives there too.
No, but if he did, that's the kind of thing that wouldn't shock you because old Papa Northcutt is very much involved in his son's business. He's
always a bad move.
He's groomed his son to get to this level so he could ride his coattails at this level. And you know what? Mission accomplished.
In fairness, I feel like Earl Woods had it more figured out when he groomed Tiger to be a golfer and make billions of dollars.
Sure, but MMA wasn't even a sport, right?
I suppose that's true.
So they had groomed this kid to be like a full contact karate champion, which I'm sure there was no money in. But he was also doing acting, and he was in these movies, and he was doing bodybuilding contests, and he's a model for Abercrombie. He's got a bunch of stuff going on. But then MMA blows up, and it's like, ooh, you know what? He's actually, because we've had him on juice for so long as a kid, he's actually way better than these regional scene bums. So he's smoking them. He's smoking them all. Now he gets to the UFC, and now you're kind of see some flaws in his game. Only because he's fighting at the absolute highest level.
He's fighting the peak guys.
I have no knock on this kid, man. He's 19 years old. Like, he's already way ahead of the curve. I just mean, you're fighting on UFC 200. All the lights are going to be shining. There's a lot of pressure because I lost my last fight. People are in my ear. Some loser on the Pat Mayo hour is calling me out for this and that. It's like, there's a lot of crap chirping around here, right? So it's like, geez, do I feel safe taking him? No. And this Enrique guy, his name's Enrique. He's probably been bullied a lot of his life.
Enrique.
So he's probably, honing his skills to come in here and pull off the upset. And do I think he wins? No. But I would probably take some type of poke on him. Not poking on him, poking on, has Northcutt figured out all of his issues? Because if he hasn't, he's going to be some problems.
How old was John Jones when he broke into the UFC?
Early 20s.
Early 20s? So he was older than Northcutt is now.
Yeah, Northcutt is the youngest guy on the roster right now, and if he was to ever win a title, which would take him, by the time he does win it, he would be older than a John Jones. But, yeah, no, if he was to win it right now, he would be the youngest champion on record.
What about when he gets man strength? What does that factor in?
If he doesn't already have that man strength, I mean, listen, sky's the limit for this kid. It really is. As long as he's not taking damage in his fights that'll chew him up, for later on in his career, he's going to be fine. I mean, he's going to be good. It's tough to see a guy with so much. He makes so much money, compared to the other guys. Not so much money compared to people who make so much money, but
compared to people of his ilk, where he's at in his career.
Yeah,
he's blowing them out of the water 20-1.
Right, and I feel bad for these guys who have competed for the UFC 8 or 9 times and don't make half of as much money and really put the time in. So it's no discredit to him. He was the right place, right time. He's got the look. He's got the attitude. Apparently it looks like he's got the work ethic, but none of that means anything if you can't get the job done, and that's what we're going to have to see on Saturday.
Any other fights you want to talk about? How about Cain Velasquez versus Travis Browne?
Yeah, Cain Velasquez. I'm hoping that we're going to get cardio Cain back because, honestly, he's got multiple ways to win this fight. If he does decide to take it to the ground, he is much better on the ground. He's a better wrestler. And I don't mean much better on the ground like his jiu-jitsu is better, so to speak, but when Cain Velasquez gets on top of you, and he elects to stay on top of you and pound you, he's going to do some massive amount of damage. He's really going to hurt you. Against Fabricio Verdum, he didn't want to play that game whatsoever, and with good reason. As Robin Black would say, hot lava. And he recognized the hot lava and was like, I'm not going to go there. In not going there, he kind of took away one of the elements out of his game. So now he's forced to just use his hands and his kicks. He had some success, completely gassed out. He was not in good shape, and he's fighting at altitude. Now you put him in Vegas. He's not at altitude. He is in shape, and he's going to have his wrestling back. If you put all those factors back with Cain Velasquez, I'm not going to get a prime version of Cain Velasquez. If I can get an 80%, 85% version of prime Cain Velasquez, he gets the job done against Travis Browne. I'm thinking he puts him away, and therefore I'm going to play that on GPP.
So who's your cash game stalwart here?
My cash game stalwart had to be Jim Miller, 10,800. I think he's safe in that if he doesn't get the finish, he's going to win all 3 rounds. He's not going to get finished. The chances of him going out there and getting dropped and you being like, oh no, and having to sweat are not very high. So you can put him on a cash game team and just, nope, this guy will get the win, and he'll, get me some takedowns and some strikes and some submission attempts, and he'll pass the guard. Great, I'm okay with that. But this guy's got a great chance to finish. Therefore, I'd put him on both teams. He's a stalwart. Now, Mark Hunt, 10,400. He is risky as a cash game play, no doubt about it. Heavyweights be heavyweights. And when you're taking on a guy the size of Brock Lesnar, obviously you are playing with fire. But in comparison to the other guys valued at his price range, I like Mark Hunt. Frankie Edgar, $9,900. Once again, this is a guy that I think is... It's hard for me to say safe because it's such a close fight, and I don't want to take too much, flack from people saying Frankie Edgar is safe. This
How
is a
old
close
is Jose
fight.
Aldo now?
29. Still pretty young.
Okay.
Frankie's like 33, 34 actually.
All right.
Yeah, Frankie Edgar. He's faster. He's in better shape. I think he's gonna have the better. He's more dynamic. He's gonna have the better game plan. And we're talking about. I'm not comparing Aldo to Brock, but when we're talking about Brock, it was like Brock had success because he was doing this thing in 2011 that could give you success. He could take guys down and wrestle them down and pound them, and that was like, oh man, he's doing that way better than everybody else. Then people kind of figured it out. Jose Aldo used to do stuff where it was like, oh man, this guy's got awesome leg kicks, and his takedown defense is real good. It's like, yeah, okay. So when we used to watch him in 2011, he was great. And then when we watched him in 2012, he was awesome. When we watched him in 2013, he was good. And it just seems like there has been a massive decline to the point that his last fight, he got knocked out in 12 seconds, right? So Frankie Edgar, who's never had those issues, he's fighting his best fights as of now. He's on the top of his game. Is taking on a guy that is likely at the bottom of his game. So I think when you think about it at the end of the day, it's like I'm getting good value on Frankie at $9,900. On a cash game team, Frankie goes out there. He's got 5 rounds to deal with. It's going to probably go the 5 rounds. He's going to win 3 of the 5 rounds. He'll get takedowns. He'll get strikes. On a cash game team, Frankie Edgar will, with the win, get you 80, maybe plus points.
Which is fine.
Yeah, on a
For
GB.
$9,900. Like you said, it's hard to fit on without punting away a lot of your bottom end.
Yes.
It's hard to fit a lot of good guys on these teams this week.
And he's an under 10,000 player who's got 5 rounds to deal with and has a definite possibility to finish the fight. When you consider his last fight, first round knockout victory. Aldo's last fight, first round knockout loss. So, if you want to play MMA math, Frankie probably puts it on him. That remains to be seen, but I think he's good for cash game. And I like him for GPP. I didn't fit him on my GPP because I got a different, theory, and I'm just going full out for this one.
Okay.
Full out.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's finish off the cash
But for
game.
cash game, Jim Miller, I think he's safe. Mark Hunt, it's safe with a good possibility to get that knockout. Frankie Edgar, I like him. Joe Lauzon, $9,700. Diego Sanchez was able to win his last fight, but that was the first time Diego, won the fight where people agreed that he physically actually did win the fight in a long, long time. He's obviously shop worn, and he's a guy that just does the same old Diego every time out. Lauzon's shop worn too. This is like, in my opinion, legend versus legend match.
Well, even to see
he's going to have a little bit more.
9,700 to 9,700 on
It
DraftKings.
is, yeah.
It's minus 110 to minus 110 on the betting odds. But do you think that Lauzon's going to win this?
I think Lauzon wins this. I really do. But
It seems kind of risky for a cash game pick, doesn't it?
Well, trust me, when you look at the other ones on it, it's like you can go with Johnny Hendricks or Kelvin Gastelum. Once again, they're in the similar position here. It's like Johnny Hendricks, on paper, should win. He's the former champion. He's better than Kelvin Gastelum. When I look at this fight, I think the same thing. I say, you know what, Joe Lauzon's a little younger than Diego. He's definitely taken less damage than Diego. His jiu-jitsu is probably better than Diego's. The fight's not going to hit the ground. And whereas Diego just barrels forward and throws wild punches, Joe Lauzon's a little crisper, a little more technical. I think he's just going to outpoint him and get the job done. But when you look at it on paper, that's just like what you think. When you look at it on paper, you're like, yeah, Diego Sanchez is a terrible matchup for this guy. Kelvin Gastelum is a terrible matchup for Johnny Hendricks. It's just, you got to go one way or the other. And for this case, Joe Lauzon has got more bonuses than anybody in the UFC. Why? Because he goes for it. He's got submissions. He's got knockouts. Finishing Diego Sanchez is very not likely to happen. But outpointing this guy, absolutely possible. And I think that's the route he's going to go down. And
you're going Julianna Pena for the last one?
Julianna Pena. If she wants something, she gets it.
All right.
I mean that.
GPP team, let's hear it. You've been building this up.
GPP, Cain Velasquez, $11,200. All right.
Okay.
My thoughts, he goes out there, puts
Wins.
some hands on him.
Wins.
Knocks him out. Jim Miller, he goes out there, he takes him down, he takes his back, he chokes him out. Mark Hunt, he goes out there, hits him, he knocks him out. I think I'm going to get 3 knockouts and a submission in those first 3 fights. Now, I'm obviously out of money. I can't even spend past $9,000 for anybody. Julianna Pena, $8,900. Kat Zingano and her, it's going to be a close fight regardless. Kat Zingano's a girl that has been finished in the past, has been hurt in the past, and Julianna Pena, I mean, she's just looking ever improving every single time. Her teammates at Sick Jitsu, they're looking ever improved every single time. I just think she's in the right place in her career to pull off what is only considered a small upset, but if she could finish her, would be a gigantic statement. And that's exactly what she's looking to do. Make a statement. She has a chance to do it. Amanda Nunes, $8,700. First of all, I only got $8,700 left, but that's besides the point.
So it's basically between Nunes and Daniel Cormier for this last spot.
No, because you can take Julianna Pena off, and you could put Frankie Edgar on, and he's got 5 rounds to deal with. And even if he loses, he's still got those 5 rounds, but if he wins a decision, it's still good on a GPP. And if he wins a finish, great on a GPP. But I decided to just roll the dice on Pena and Nunes because...
You can't afford Frankie Edgar.
He's
9,900.
Oh, sorry.
Pena's 8,900.
I had something else then, because I had Frankie on this team, but I dropped him for somebody. I would have to switch something else.
You probably took off Hunt and put on...
But you can have somebody else, too. I'd have to rework it, but you can put Frankie on that team with Jim Miller and Cain Velasquez and just take someone else.
If you take, like, Enrique Marin?
Or Dana Cormier. No, yeah, exactly. Fair enough. But I avoided him. I went with Pena, Amanda Nunes. There's like a feeling in the air. Plus, you know how we talk about in every episode, what always comes up? American Top Team. It always comes up at some point. Amanda Nunes, American Top Team, and all the crew at Top Team, they'll tell you, this girl's going to win. She's going to pull the upset. I'm telling you right now, she's going to pull the upset. And now would they tell you, she's not gonna win? No, probably not. But they seem very vocal. They seem very behind her. They seem very confident in it. And when I look at her stylistically, how she matches up with Tate, great. Minus the fact that the cardio will probably cost her. But this is GPP. I gotta take a chance. And a chance on someone who's 8,700. If she wins, I know a lot of people are gonna play
No one's
Tate.
gonna have her.
No
one's gonna have her. And people probably have a lot of Tate.
A lot of Tate. So I think it's a double whammy in that regard. It's well priced, and it's not a well priced. She might be able to just grind out a split. It's well priced that, geez, she could theoretically knock this girl out.
Going to do it on the Pat Mayo Hour for UFC 200 DraftKings picks and breakdown. You and Paul on the Bookie Beatdown are doing like all these cards, right?
Yeah, it's been a lot. So we got the Thursday card, the Friday card, the Saturday card, and then there's a follow-up Wednesday card in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Wednesday card.
Yeah, after the Saturday UFC 200.
Isn't that like MMA overload?
I'll be down with it because it's a Wednesday.
I know you'll be down with it, but
Wednesday?
I guess they just want people to tune into UFC 200. And
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
some of this
yeah.
other stuff too. Like who's fighting on these other cards?
What?
All like the
Sioux Falls native Ben Wynn.
all the names that I recognize are fighting on this card.
You'd be shocked, man. I thought the same thing. Oh, they're going to put so much on UFC 200 that the other cards will have like a burnout effect. And maybe the Fight Night card, sure. But I mean, UFC 201 and UFC 202 and UFC 202, that's McGregor's return.
Yeah, but they're not this week,
Loaded.
though. I'm talking about the fights this week.
Yeah, they're good cards. You got Roy Nelson, Derek Lewis. You got a title fight on the Thursday.
What is it?
Eddie Alvarez taking on Rafael Dos Anjos, 155-pound strap.
Okay. Well, you can check out all the Bookie Beatdown shows by following @Bookie Beatdown on Twitter. Just go to the Fight Network YouTube page.
I recommend you do.
It's all up there. And you can leave like mean comments towards Paul, and he won't know where they came from.
That's true, as long as you have a fake name, which most people do.
Do they? Do people comment with fake names on YouTube?
I would guess so.
I guess that makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't want people to know the craziness that you're spewing.
No.
Anyway,
Sure.
you can follow Cody @CJSaftic on Twitter. You can follow me @ThePME. And you can subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on YouTube and iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and Podomatic. Those are the audio versions. You know, Xbox, whatever. Anyway, the Fantasy Sports Network is a 24-hour 24/7 is the word that I'm looking for. 365 days a year TV channel. Ask your local cable provider to pick it up. If you like fantasy sports, it's probably something you're going to want to check out. Anyway, Pat out, and I'll see you next time.
For the latest expert fantasy sports strategy and tips on YouTube, click subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and call your local cable TV provider to order Fantasy Sports Network, or watch us on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Xbox.